And the House Judiciary Committee is criticizing the Biden administration over its stance on parental rights in schools. Here's One America's Lexington Howe.
It's clear that the Biden administration has no tolerance for those with ideological beliefs different from their own. But the Constitution guarantees freedom of speech and thought to all Americans, and that certainly includes the rights of parents over their children's education.
The attack against parents continues. House Judiciary Republicans met Thursday to discuss how the National School Boards Association, quote, colluded with the Biden administration to insert federal law enforcement into local school board meetings. The committee went on to further detail instances where this occurred.
On September 29, 2021, the NSBA sent a letter to President Biden, and in the letter they equated concerned parents voicing their opinion at school board meetings with domestic terrorists. They urged the Biden administration to use the Patriot Act against them. They used the federal statutory authorities against them. On October 4th, just 5 days after the NSBA sent its letter, Attorney General Merrick Garland issued a memorandum that directed the FBI and U.S. attorneys' offices to address a purported, quote, disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence at school board meetings.
Additionally, they stated the Patriot Act was passed in response to 9/11 to combat international terrorism, but this administration is now using it to target Americans.
Families across the country were shocked by this letter, and even more taken aback when 5 days later, lightning speed in Washington, D.C., Attorney General Merrick Garland signed a memo on October 4th, 2021, directing the Federal Bureau of Investigation, working with each United States attorney, to convene meetings with federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial leaders in each federal judicial district within 30 days of the issuance of this memorandum.
The president and founder of Parents Defending Education added parents were frightened.
In the days following the release of DOJ's memo, we fielded dozens of requests from concerned parents who worried whether they should continue their advocacy work or simply stay home, fearing a knock at the door from federal law enforcement.
She went on to say parents have a right to assemble and to speak, but the government and political officials have chosen to look at it as violent, offensive, or hateful. And while the NSBA eventually retracted and apologized for their letter, Attorney General Merrick Garland did not retract the memo he put out, causing many to question the administration's overall response to the issue of free speech and parental rights.
Because a lot of people have wondered why. Why would the Biden administration and the Department of Justice act when it did on that infamous now school board memo? Quote, page 2, the documents received pursuant to this committee's subpoena show the absence of a legitimate nationwide basis for the Attorney General's directive to insert federal law enforcement into local school board matters. The documents also shed light onto how the administration worked with education special interests to generate the predicate for the Attorney General's directive. It appears from these documents and the information received that the administration's actions were a political offensive meant to quell swelling discord over controversial education curricula and unpopular school board decisions.
And the decision came just weeks before a crucial election.
The Attorney General's directive, here it is, came just weeks before a pivotal gubernatorial election in Virginia, in which education policies were hotly debated and a local school board's actions were under intense scrutiny. The inference from the initial tranche of subpoenaed documents is that the Justice Department's actions were a reaction to these political circumstances rather than a legitimate law enforcement response to any serious nationwide threat. The administration's goal seems to have been silencing the critics of its radical education policies and neutralizing an issue that was threatening Democrat Party prospects in the close gubernatorial race in Virginia.
Meanwhile, the committee hopes this hearing and future hearings on the subject will present the facts, reform this, quote, chaos, and ensure federal agencies are also, quote, never again allowed to abuse taxpayers against them. Lexington Howe, One America News.